Chapter 1: The Nebula's Teeth. The ASF Relentless bled atmosphere. A thin, white plume jetted from a rent in her secondary hull, crystallizing instantly in the void before dispersing against the bruised purple and crimson gases of the Shard Nebula. The scout ship, a converted Maelstrom-class corvette, had once been sleek. Now she was a patchwork of scarred armor, jury-rigged conduits, and silent weapon mounts. Her designation was a cruel joke. Inside the CIC, the air was thick with the smell of ozone, burnt insulation, and cold sweat. Commander Elias Vance stood rigid, his single organic eye, the other was a matte black tactical implant, fixed on the main holographic display. It showed nothing but the churning, opaque fog of the nebula, a tomb of light and gas. "Status," he said, his voice was a low rasp, stripped of all emotion. "I-core levels in the coolant loop are stabilizing, sir," reported Lieutenant Soria, her fingers dancing across a flickering console. "The field generator is holding at 83% efficiency, but the main emitter is cracked. One more hard burn and we'll be venting plasma into our own engine room." "And the package," Soria's face paled. She gestured to a secondary screen showing a heavily shielded containment cylinder anchored to the ship's central spine. Inside, a faint, sickly green light pulsed, a heartbeat, a countdown. "Stable, but the resonance frequencies are shifting. It's reacting to something out there." Vance didn't need to ask what. The Relentless had been on station for 7 weeks. 7 weeks of drifting, silent, playing dead while the Leviathan, the first of its kind to enter human space, had cruised past them, a city-sized mountain of chitin and impossible biology. They had watched it devour a Jovian mining platform, its tendrils dissolving the station's superstructure like sugar in water. They had recorded its emissions, its patterns, its weakness, and they had captured a fragment of it. The package, that was the secret the Relentless now guarded. Not just the data, but a live biological sample of the enemy, a key, a weapon, and a death sentence if they were caught. "They're coming back," murmured Tactical Officer Chen, a gaunt man with a nervous twitch in his left hand. "I've got a gravity wake, bearing 27 Mark IV, 2 contacts fast, Scythe class." Vance's jaw tightened. The Syndicate. A coalition of 3 minor alien races, the avian K-Theron, the crystalline Alari, and the squat, brutal Grawl, who had carved out a fiefdom in the nebula's treacherous depths. They were scavengers, pirates, and opportunists. They had no love for the Leviathan, but they hated humanity more. To them, the Relentless was a prize. A crippled ship with advanced human tech, ripe for the taking. "They've been sniffing around for 3 days, Chen continued. "This time they're coming in hot, ETA 12 minutes. Vance didn't turn. "They want the package. They don't know what it is, but they can smell the power." He finally looked at his crew. 5 people, all that was left of a complement of 20. The rest were frozen in the medical bay's cryopods, casualties of the initial Leviathan encounter. "We can't outrun them. We can't fight them. We can scuttle," Soria whispered, her voice barely audible. "No," Vance's reply was immediate, absolute. "The package goes to Admiral Rourke. It's the only chance. We have to understand what we're facing, to build a weapon that doesn't bounce off their hides." He turned to the comms officer, a young woman named Teller who had been weeping silently, her hands shaking. "Open a channel, wideband, Syndicate tactical frequencies." "Sir." Teller looked up, eyes wide. "Do it." The channel hissed open. Vance leaned into the pickup, his scarred face a mask of cold fury. He didn't shout, he didn't plead. He spoke with the terrifying calm of a man who has already accepted his death and is simply deciding the price of admission. "Syndicate vessels, this is Commander Elias Vance of the ASF Relentless. You are violating a designated quarantine zone. You are approaching a human military vessel. You have 10 seconds to reverse course and exit the nebula." A burst of alien laughter, a chittering, grating sound came through the speakers. Then a voice, translated by the ship's AI, dripping with contempt. "Human, you are a broken toy. Your ship leaks. Your weapons are cold. You have nothing we want but your technology, which we will take. Surrender, and we will let your crew die quickly." Vance's lips didn't move. His tactical implant was already running the calculations. The Relentless had 1 card left to play, a single, desperate gamble. "You are wrong," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than any shout. "We have one thing you want. We have your extinction." He cut the channel. "Chen, power up the main emitter, 100%, divert all life support." "Sir, the emitter will shatter. We'll lose containment." "We won't need containment." "Sorry, vent the forward reactor core. Flood the nebula with ionized hydrogen." The CIC went silent. They understood. It was a suicide play. The I-core disruption field, pushed to its breaking point, would interact with the vented reactor plasma and the nebula's own volatile gases. It would create a localized star. A pulse of devastating energy that would fry every unshielded system within 100 kilometers, including their own. Vance looked at his crew. "We are the last line. The secret dies with us or we deliver it. There is no middle ground." He placed his hand on a single unmarked console. "On my mark." The Syndicate ships grew larger on the display. Their sharp, predatory lines closed in. They were seconds from firing range. Vance waited until they were committed. Until they had no time to turn. Mark, the Relentless screamed, "We need to write Chapter 2 of 12 for Episode 30. The context provided ends with Vance saying Mark and the Relentless screaming. So Chapter 2 should continue from that moment. The story is a military sci-fi with a lone scout ship guarding a dark secret. The previous chapter ended with a desperate gamble, overloading the emitter to create a pulse. Chapter 2 should show the immediate aftermath of that action, the effect on the Syndicate ships, and the state of the Relentless. Must follow strict rules, macro to micro scale, no clicky cutes, crisp dialogue, high tension, 800-100 words. Output only story text. We need to write a gripping continuation. The pulse goes off. The Syndicate ships are cry-pepled or destroyed, but the Relentless is also heavily damaged. Possibly the secret, the dark galactic secret, is hinted at or revealed. The series title mentions guarding a dark galactic secret. Maybe the secret is something in the Nebula or the ship itself carries it. Vance line, "We have your extinction," suggests they have a weapon or knowledge. The ick or disruption field might be related to that secret. After the pulse, the Nebula might clear or something emerges, but we must stay focused on the immediate scene. Let's outline the pulse detonates. The CIC shakes, systems fail. The Syndicate ships are caught in the blast, their shields are overwhelmed. Vance orders damage reports. The Relentless is cry-pepled but alive. Then a new threat or revelation, perhaps the pulse activated something in the Nebula. Or the Syndicate flagship survived, tension must remain high. End with a cliffhanger for next chapter. Write in third person, past tense. Use military jargon, keep dialogue realistic, avoid melodrama. Show Vance's calm under pressure. The Relentless didn't scream, it tore. A column of white-hot plasma erupted from the forward reactor vent, slamming into the nebula's hydrogen fog. The ichor disruption emitter pushed past every safety limit, vibrated at a frequency that liquefied metal. Vance felt the deck plates hum through his boots, a death rattle or a war cry, he couldn't tell which. Outside, the universe turned inside out. The pulse expanded as a perfect sphere of annihilation. It wasn't a weapon, it was a star seed, a brief, furious sun born from the ship's dying breath. The Syndicate vanguard had no time to scream. Their shields flared white, then black, hulls sublimated. Reactors went critical in a chain that turned 3 warships into expanding clouds of slag and ionized gas. The Relentless rode the shockwave like a paper boat in a tsunami. Brace. Soria's voice cut through the cacophony. Her hands danced across the console, rerouting power from dead systems to keep the inertial dampeners alive. They held barely. Vance was thrown against his harness, ribs cracking against the webbing. The CIC lights flickered, died, then came back at emergency red. Silence, the kind that hurts. Vance blinked blood from his eyes. His tactical implant fed him a damage summary, hull integrity at 12%. Main emitter gone, reactor offline, life support failing, weapons cold. They were a drifting corpse, but the Syndicate fleet was a graveyard. On the main display, the Nebula churned with debris. 3 capital ships gone, 2 more listed, venting atmosphere, their drives dark. The flagship, the Sovereign Talon, had pulled back at the last moment. Its bow was scarred, but it was alive, angry. "They're hailing us," Chen said, voice hollow. "Put it through." The Syndicate commander appeared, no mask this time, a scarred face, eyes burning with cold fury. "You've killed thousands of my crew for nothing. Your ship is dead. Your secret dies with you." Vance let the silence stretch. Then he smiled, a thin, terrible thing. "You think that was our secret?" The commander's eyes narrowed. Vance nodded to Soria. She keyed a sequence on her console. The Relentless's secondary array, the one they'd never used, the one buried in the hull's deepest compartment, began to hum. A different frequency, one that made the Syndicate commander's face go pale. "Hull's cleared a path through the Nebula," Vance said. "Behind us is a singularity, a black hole compressed and stabilized by the very ichor you're so desperate to control. One more pulse, a directed one, and it collapses. The resulting gamma burst will sterilize this entire sector, your homeworld, your colonies, your entire species." The commander's hand went to his sidearm. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Vance leaned forward. "You wanted our technology. Here it is, the button that ends your empire. Now here's my new offer. You leave. You never come back. You forget this system exists. In exchange, I don't press it. You'll die here anyway." "Yes. But you'll die with me." The commander stared. The seconds stretched, then he cut the channel. On the display, the Sovereign Talon began a slow turn. Its remaining escorts followed. They limped back toward the Nebula's edge, leaving the Relentless alone in the wreckage. Vance let out a breath. "Chen, status on that secondary array." "It's a decoy, sir, a glorified comms booster. We never had a singularity weapon." "I know." Vance closed his eyes. "But they don't." Soria's voice was barely a whisper. "Sir, life support has 12 minutes, maybe 15 if we cut non-essential compartments." Vance opened his eyes, looked at his crew. 3 people who had just stared down extinction and 1 for now. Patch me through to every compartment, shipwide. The speakers crackled. This is the captain. We bought time. That's all we ever had. Now we use it to find a way out. Every system, every scrap of power, every idea. I don't care how crazy. We are not dead yet. He cut the channel. The CIC hummed with the sound of people who refused to quit. Outside, the nebula swirled, hiding secrets and graves. The Relentless drifted, battle-scarred, alone, but still guarding its dark truth. And somewhere in the black, something else began to move. The violet haze of the nebula bled across the Relentless's cracked viewport, painting the twisted wreckage of the skirmish point debris field in bruised purples and sickly golds. Chen's fingers flew across his sensor console before the captain's shipwide announcement faded, the sharp beep of a new contact ping cutting through the CIC's low hum. Contact, bearing 270 Mark 5, range 400 clicks, he barked, no trace of the relief he'd felt 10 seconds prior. Small craft, no transponder, hard flux signature. It's not Talon. Vance crossed to the tactical station before Soria could pull up the schematics, his battle-scarred glove smudging the melted edge of the viewport where a plasma burn had seared the polymer 3 days prior. Identify, classification, can't get a lock, sir, Chen gritted out, tapping a sequence into his console that made the contact's signature flicker on the main display. It's running silent, no active sensors. Flux output matches the salvage crawlers the Talon uses to sweep wreckage for prototype tech. Someone's coming to pick over what's left of their escorts. Soria's voice cut in, sharp with stress. Life support down to 11 minutes if we cut engineering and crew quarters non-essential. Shut down the galleon head, we get 14. That's the ceiling. Vance's jaw tightened. The Talon retreat was a stall, not surrender. If that crawler found the wreckage of the Talon's lead escort, the one they'd lured into the pre-laid minefield, it would pull the intact data core. The core held the coordinates of the Relentless, the location of the anomaly they'd been sent to guard, and every scrap of human defensive tech the Talon had been hunting for 6 months. If the Talon recovered that core, they'd be back with a full battle fleet before the Relentless's life support failed. Chen, can you spoof the crawler's sensors? Vance asked, already pulling up the minefield deployment log on his tablet. Make it think the wreckage's data core was destroyed in the explosion. Maybe, Chen said, typing faster. But I need power from the secondary comms array to boost the spoof signal. That's the same power Soria's trying to divert to life support. Soria slammed her fist on the console hard enough to rattle the chipped coffee mug sitting at its edge. We don't have enough power for both, sir. Keep the crew alive for another 10 minutes or hide the secret that could save the whole outer rim. The speakers crackled again, this time with a low, static-laced transmission that made all 3 of them freeze. It wasn't Talon code. It was human old pre-unification, the frequency scouts used for emergency distress when comms were compromised by enemy jamming. Relentless, this is Scout Ship Ren out of Outpost 7. We picked up your fake singularity burst signature 20 minutes out. We're bringing a rescue shuttle, ETA 12 minutes, hold on. Vance stared at the display, then at the sensor ping of the incoming Talon crawler, now 250 clicks out and closing fast. The Wren was a lone Scout 2, unarmed, slow. If the crawler got to the wreckage first, it would pick up the Wren's signature 2 and call the Talon back before the rescue shuttle could dock. Soria, divert all non-essential power to life support, Vance said, his voice steady, no trace of the adrenaline humming in his veins. Cut artificial gravity in the lower cargo decks if you have to. Keep the crew alive. Sir, that leaves us with no power for stealth, no power for weapons, Soria said, her fingers hovering over the power routing console. If the crawler finds us, we can't fight it off. We don't need to fight it off, Vance said, pulling up the Wren's flight path on the tactical display. Chen, can you piggyback the Wren's distress signal onto the crawler's comms array? Make it look like the signal S coming from the Talon wreckage. Chen's eyes lit up. Yeah, if I route it through the decoy array we used for the singularity bluff, the Talon will think the Wren is a human attack craft coming to recover the data core. They'll turn the crawler around to intercept it before it gets close to the wreckage. Do it, Vance ordered. He turned back to the viewport where the violet nebula swirled, hiding the dark secret they'd spent 3 months guarding. The test site for the human first strike drone fleet, tucked into the nebula's radiation pockets, invisible to all but the most advanced long-range sensors. The Talon had been hunting that site for 6 months, intent on wiping out the only human military asset capable of breaking their blockade of the outer rim. The bluff with the fake singularity weapon had bought them time, but now the Wren's accidental rescue signal had given them a way to draw the Talon away from the site and off the Relentless before either the crew died or the secret was exposed. Crawler pinged 150 clicks out, sensors sweeping the wreckage. Chen typed a final command and the ping vanished, replaced by a sharp Talon priority alert flashing red on the display. Unknown human craft bearing down on Talon salvage operation, intercept immediately. The crawler's thrusters flared bright blue on the long-range sensor feed as it burned hard away from the wreckage toward the Wren's position. Vance let out a short, sharp breath. "Sorry, how much time on life support now?" 13 minutes, sir, she said, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Wren's ETA is down to 9 minutes. "We're gonna make it." Outside, the Relentless drifted still, its hull scarred with plasma burns and shrapnel, still guarding the secret hidden in the nebula's heart. The threat wasn't gone, not yet. The Talon would realize the crawler had been spoofed eventually, and they'd come back with more ships. But for the first time since the Talon had jumped into the system, Vance allowed himself to think they might just live to see the next day. We need to write Chapter 4 of 12 for Episode 30. The story context given: the crew of the Wren, a human scout ship, has used a spoofed signal to lure a Talon crawler away from the Relentless, a battle-scarred ship guarding a secret. They have 13 minutes of life support left, and the Wren is 9 minutes away. Chapter 4 should continue from there. The rules: macro to micro scale, no cliches, high stakes, 801,000 words, output only story. We need to advance the plot. The Wren arrives, rescue, but the Talon may realize the deception. Tension must remain. The secret is dark, galactic secret. Episode 30 of series. Keep military crisp dialogue. Focus on calm humans versus arrogant aliens. Let's outline. Chapter 4 picks up with the Wren closing in. The crew of the Relentless, Vance, Soraya, maybe others, prepare for docking. The Talon crawler is burning away, but will realize it's a decoy. Possibly the Wren's approach triggers something. The secret must remain guarded. Maybe the Wren's captain contacts Vance. We need to show the rescue, but also the looming threat. Avoid CLAKs like "we are not out of the woods yet," but convey that. Write in third person, past tense. Use technical details. Keep pacing tight. No intro. The Wren's silhouette grew from a dim speck to a jagged dart against the nebula's glow. Vance watched the tactical overlay. The crawler had already burned past the 50-click mark, its blue thrusters a dying star on the display. The spoofed priority alert was still broadcasting, but the Talon pilot would check the real signal within the next 8 minutes. "Maybe less. Docking collar is 5 meters off our ventral port," Soraya said, her fingers flying across the damage control panel. "No external maneuvering on our side. The Wren's going to have to match our drift and latch on cold." Vance pulled himself to the hatch. "How much hull integrity do we have around that port?" 73%. The plasma burns are concentrated amidships. That section stayed clean. He keyed the local comm. "Wren actual, this is Vance. We have 13 minutes of life support remaining. What's your boarding plan?" A pause, then a woman's voice, flat and efficient. "Vance, Commander Reyes. We'll hard dock, cycle your airlock, and transfer you via emergency tunnel. Expect 6 minutes from contact to hatch seal. Your crew count 4, all ambulatory, but Kettle has a sucking chest wound. We've got a field patch on it." "Understood. We'll have a medic on the collar. Stand by." The Wren's hull eclipsed the starfield as it slid into position. Vance felt the ship tremor through the deck, the magnetic clamps engaging, the collar compressing against the Relentless's scarred skin. A hiss, then a thud as the seals locked. "Pressure equalized," Soraya said. "Airlock is green." Vance hauled Kettle onto his shoulder. The engineer's breathing was wet, shallow, but his eyes were open. "Did we buy it?" Kettle rasped. "We bought it," Vance said. "Now move." The emergency tunnel was a ribbed canvas tube, barely wide enough for 2 men. Tracer lights along the seam pulsed red. Vance went first, Kettle's weight dragging at his left side. Behind him, Soraya, then Jenkins, the comms tech, and finally the XO, Lieutenant Harper, who sealed the Relentless's hatch with a coded lock. 50 seconds later, Vance's boots hit the Wren's deck. The interior was stark: gray panels, exposed conduits, the smell of recycled air and ozone. A medic in a blue vest was already peeling Kettle off his shoulder, laying him on a stretcher. "Talzai," the medic muttered, pressing a fresh seal over the wound. "This is a combat patch. How long?" 3 hours, Vance said. "He'll live, maybe." Commander Reyes stepped out of the cockpit. She was lean, her face drawn with the kind of fatigue that came from weeks of stealth running. She didn't offer a handshake. "Your ship is a liability. The Talon are going to sweep back and slag at the moment they realize your decoy is a ghost." "I know," Vance said. "That's why I left the self-destruct active." "If they board, they're not getting the data core." Reyes' eyes narrowed. "Data core? What data?" Vance looked at the deck. "The secret, the Nebula. The thing that had kept the Relentless alive for 6 months. The reason the Talon have been hunting this sector. We found something deep in the Nebula, a structure, non-human. The Talon know it exists, but they don't know where. We're the only ones who have the coordinates." Reyes was silent for a long moment, then she turned to the cockpit. "Helm, get us clear. Plot a course for the outer rim, maximum stealth. We're not leaving this system with a tail." She faced Vance again. "You're going to tell me everything, and then we're going to decide if that thing is worth dying for." The Wren's engines hummed, a low vibration that built to a growl. On the rear display, the Relentless receded into the nebula, a dark speck against the gas clouds. The crawler was still burning away, but the Talon's silence was suspicious. They'd figure it out soon. Vance allowed himself a single breath, then he started talking. We need to write chapter 5 of 12 for episode 30. The story context ends with Vance about to tell Reyes about the structure. The chapter should continue from there, following the macro to micro scale, arrogant alien empires versus resourceful humans. No cliches, crisp military dialogue, high stakes, 800-100 words, output only story text. We need to advance the plot, reveal the secret, but also show tension with the Talon pursuing. The chapter should be detailed, engaging, possibly include action or decision-making. Let's outline. Vance explains what they found in the Nebula, an ancient alien structure, possibly a weapon or something that can change the balance of power. Reyes reacts, skeptical but interested. Then Talon ships appear, forcing them to act. The chapter ends with a cliffhanger or a decision to fight or flee. Keep it tense. The crawl of the Wren's interior lights matched the thrum in Vance's skull. He stood in the cramped galley, Reyes across from him, arms crossed. Her XO, a wiry woman named Lieutenant Corva, leaned against the bulkhead, thumbing a sidearm. Start at the beginning, Reyes said. No skips, Vance pinched the bridge of his nose. 6 months ago, the Relentless was on a survey sweep along the nebula's northern arm, standard gravity mapping. We found a gravity anomaly too precise to be natural. We followed it. 3 days deep, we found a structure, a sphere roughly 2 kilometers in diameter. Surface looked like obsidian, but it absorbed every frequency we threw at it. No reflections, no emissions. Alien, Corva asked. Definitely. No known human design, no Talon's signature. We tried to breach it. Nothing worked. Cutters, plasma, kinetic. Then our engineer, a sharp kid named Harlow, noticed the hull wasn't reacting to our attacks, it was observing them. The surface would ripple exactly at the point of impact, then smooth out, like it was learning. Reyes' jaw tightened. You're saying it's intelligent. I'm saying it's more than a structure, it's a system. We managed to get a passive sensor array close enough to read its internal energy signature. It's not dormant, it's cycling slowly like a heartbeat, and it's broadcasting a signal, not directed, not encrypted, just a repeating pattern. We couldn't decode it, but the Talon picked it up. They've been hunting us ever since. Why not destroy it, Corva said. If it's that dangerous, why not slag it from orbit? Vance met her eyes. Because we don't know if it's a weapon or a door. Or a trap, and the Talon want it intact. They sent 3 hunter-killer groups after us. We've been running ever since. They're willing to lose ships to keep us from getting the coordinates out. Reyes uncrossed her arms, planted her palms on the table. You're telling me you've been carrying a potential alien superweapons location for 6 months and you haven't tried to signal high command? We tried. The Talon have a comms blockade around this sector. Every relay we hit was compromised. The only reason we're still alive is the Nebula masks our signature, but now they've got a fix on our general position. They'll sweep grid by grid. A tone sounded from the cockpit. Commander, the helmsman called, multiple contacts emerging from the Nebula's western edge. 6 Talon frigates, 1 battlecruiser. They're forming a picket line. Looks like they're hurting us. Reyes swore under her breath. They're not waiting for us to run. They're boxing us in. Corva clicked her sidearm safety off. We can't outrun a battlecruiser in this rust bucket, and we don't have the teeth to fight. What's the play? Vance opened his mouth, but Reyes held up a hand. Our data core is small. We can copy the coordinates onto a military-grade data chip, then wipe the ship's computer. If we get boarded, they find nothing. And if they catch us before we can wipe it, Corva asked. Reyes' eyes were cold. Then we don't let them catch us. Helm, plot a course for the Nebula's core. If we're going to die, we'll do it in the soup. The Talon won't follow blind. They might, Vance said. They want this bad enough. Then we make sure they pay for every kilometer. Reyes turned to him. You're coming with me. We're going to copy that data right now. Corva, prep the decoy buoys. If we can't run, we'll make them think we did. The Wren's engines pitched higher, pushing into the clouds. The viewport showed a wall of violet and orange gas shot through with lightning. Behind them, the Talon ships sharpened into hard points of light, closing. Vance followed Reyes to the data core room. She pulled a panel revealing a sealed slot. Insert the chip. We have 90 seconds before the purge cycle locks. He slid the chip in. The terminal flashed green, copying now. The ship shuddered. A proximity alarm bleated. Commander, they're firing kinetic slugs, closing fast. Reyes grabbed the chip as it ejected. Done, now we run. The Wren dove into the Nebula's heart. The storm swallowed them, sensors screaming false returns. Vance gripped a handhold as the ship twisted, Reyes' knuckles white on the console. On the edge of the display, a Talon frigate emerged from the gas, too close. It fired a single shot that clipped the Wren's port nacelle. The ship yawed, alarms shrieking. Hull breach in Section 3, Corva shouted. We're losing atmosphere. Reyes didn't flinch. Seal it. Helm, find us a pocket, something dense enough to hide in. The Wren bled into the fog, trailing debris. The Talon ship hovered, scanning, then it turned, sliding back into the clouds, silence save for the hiss of escaping air. Vance looked at the data chip in Reyes' hand. That thing is worth dying for. Reyes stared at the Nebula. Maybe, but we're not dead yet. The Wren's interior lights flickered to a low amber as emergency seals hissed shut over the ruptured bulkhead in Section 3. Thin plume of vapor curled from the breach, sucked into the venting ducts before the pressure equalized. Corva's voice, stripped of its usual edge, came over the intercom. Atmosphere stabilizing at 0.8 bar, patch holding for now. Reyes released the data chip from her palm and slipped it into the secure reader bolted to the bulkhead. The terminal blinked once, then displayed a scrolling string of encrypted glyphs. Copy complete, she said, voice flat. Now we need to know what we're carrying. Vance leaned against the console, his shoulders still tense from the maneuver. If it's worth a Talon frigate slug, it's either a weapon or a key. Reyes didn't look up. Or both, a soft chime announced the arrival of Ortega, chief engineer, his boots muffled by the deck's anti-static coating. He carried a handheld scanner, its display cycling through frequencies. Hull integrity down 12% in the port nacelle. We've got microfractures propagating along the spar. If we take another hit, the whole wing could peel. Reyes finally glanced at him. Patch it with the polymer strips from Locker 4. Corva, reroute power to the aft thrusters. We need to stay mobile. Ortega nodded and moved toward the locker, his movements economical. The ship's internal comms crackled as the Talon frigate's ping echoed again, a distant thrum that seemed to vibrate through the nebula's ionized gases. They're still scanning, Vance said, eyes fixed on the tactical overlay. A cluster of red blips hovered at the edge of the sensor fog, their signatures fluctuating as the storm's turbulent, scrambled returns. Looks like they're running a passive sweep, trying to nail our wake. Reyes tapped a command, bringing up a three-dimensional map of the nebula's density gradients. There's a pocket of heavier silicates about 7 clicks ahead. If we can ride the downdraft, we'll lose their active lock. She turned to Vance. Take the helm. Keep us on that vector, low and slow. Corva, keep the purge cycle on standby. If they get a lock, we dump the core and blow the compartment. Vance slipped into the pilot's seat, his hands finding the familiar contours of the flight stick. The Wren shuddered as he eased the throttles, the ship drifting sideways into a current of violet-tinged gas. Outside the viewport, the nebula roiled, lightning forking silently across the expanse, illuminating flecks of dust that glittered like shattered glass. The Talon frigate's silhouette resolved briefly, a sleek, obsidian hull bristling with railgun barrels, before disappearing again into the murk. A faint whine rose from the ship's external speakers as the frigate's targeting laser swept the area, searching for a reflected signature. Laser sweep detected, Corva warned. They're pulling a range gate. Reyes' jaw tightened. Signal them back with a burst of noise, make them think we're jamming. She keyed the communications array, broadcasting a wide-band burst of static modulated with a false harmonic. The frigate's laser flickered, then stalled as its processors tried to parse the interference. For a heartbeat, the nebula seemed to hold its breath. Then the frigate's engines flared, a sudden burst of thrust that sent it lurching forward, its bow cutting through the gas like a blade. They're changing course, Vance said, voice tight, heading for the silicate pocket. Reyes leaned forward, eyes narrowed. If they get there first, they'll have a clear shot. We need to deny them the orbit. She tapped a sequence into the nav computer, overriding the autopilot. The Wren's thrusters fired in a staggered pattern, sending the ship into a corkscrew dive that rode the edge of a downdraft. The ship shuddered as atmospheric shear tugged at its hull, metal groaning under stress. Outside, the silicate pocket loomed, a dense cloud of iron-rich particles that absorbed sensor pings like a sponge. The Talon frigate, its nose pointed directly at the pocket, began to decelerate, its thrusters sputtering as it tried to match the downdraft's velocity. They're slowing, Ortega reported from the engineering station, his scanner flashing. Their thrust efficiency dropping 11%, they're fighting the downdraft. Reyes allowed herself a thin smile. Good, let them burn. The Wren slipped into the pocket, the external view turning a uniform, muted gray as the silicate particles scattered light. Sensors went blind for a moment, then returned with a low-resolution echo of the frigate's silhouette, half obscured by the particulate haze. Visual contact, Vance said. They're trying to punch through. A sudden impact rattled the hull, a glancing blow from a railgun round that had punched through the silicate veil. The ship lurched, alarms blaring as a secondary coolant line ruptured. Coolant leak in line 7, Corva shouted, pressure dropping. Ortega was already at the leak, sealing the breach with a rapid set epoxy. Seal holding, coolant flow restored at 70%. Reyes didn't pause. Vance, keep us in the downdraft. Corva, prep the EMP burst. If they get a lock on our engine signature, we fry their guidance. The frigate, now visibly strained, fired another salvo. This time the round struck the Wren's starboard flank, shearing off a portion of the external sensor array. Sparks flew across the console as the feed flickered. Array degraded, Vance reported, his voice steady despite the jolt. We've lost lateral LiDAR. Reyes glanced at the damage readout. We'll rely on inertial and magnetic. Corva calculated the EMP burst would have to be timed perfectly. Corva's fingers flew across the console, pulling up the frigate's engine signature from the passive acoustic data they'd gathered in the nebula's fringe. The ship was a veteran design, heavy on plasma thrusters, light on shielding, a brawler built for close quarters intimidation, not finesse. "They're locking," Vance said, his voice tight, "missile tubes hot. Let them fire," Reyes ordered. "Corva EMP in 3 seconds, target their forward guidance array." The Wren's hull groaned as the downdraft shifted, the silicate haze thinning for a moment. The frigate's silhouette sharpened, its prow swinging toward them. A missile streaked out, its exhaust a bright orange flare against the gray. EMP away. The burst rippled outward, invisible but devastating. The missile's guidance system hiccuped, its trajectory wobbling as it lost lock. It sailed past the Wren's bow, detonating harmlessly against a silicate outcropping 100 meters behind them. The frigate's engines sputtered, its forward array flickered, then went dark. "They're blind," Ortega said, a note of grim satisfaction in his voice. "For now," Reyes replied, "but they'll reroute. Vance, bring us around. I want their starboard flank exposed to the downdraft." Vance adjusted the Wren's attitude, the ship groaning as it turned. The frigate was still moving, its thrusters firing in erratic bursts as it tried to compensate for the lost guidance. It was a wounded predator, dangerous but predictable. "They're hailing us," Corva said, her brow furrowed. "Audio only," Reyes nodded. "Put it through." A voice crackled over the comm, harsh, guttural, tinged with static. "Human vessel, you are in violation of veteran territorial claim. Surrender your position and your cargo or be destroyed." Reyes leaned forward, her voice flat. "We're not carrying cargo, we're carrying a warning. Turn back now and you'll live to relay it." There was a pause, then a burst of static that might have been laughter. "You are in no position to make demands. Your ship is damaged. Your weapons are limited. We will board you and take what we want." "You'll try," Reyes said and cut the channel. The frigate's engines flared again, its bow swinging back toward them. It was attempting a ramming maneuver, using its mast to compensate for its blindness. "They're committing," Vance said, "full thrust." Reyes felt the Wren shudder as the frigate's engines surged. The downdraft was still pulling at both ships, but the frigate's momentum was carrying it forward, straight at them. "Corva, secondary EMP ready, charged and ready, but it'll take out our own sensors for a minute if we fire at this close." "Do it." The burst erupted from the Wren's hull, a silent shockwave that washed over both ships. The Wren's consoles flickered, then went dark. For a moment they were flying blind, the only sound the low hum of the reactor and the creak of stressed metal. "Sensors coming back," Vance reported. "Visual only, frigate is drifting." The frigate's engines had cut out entirely, its hull was dark, its thrusters dead. The downdraft was pulling it sideways, dragging it toward the nebula's core. "They're dead in the water," Ortega said, "but their life support is still running. They'll recover in a few minutes." Reyes studied the damaged frigate on the visual feed. It was a testament to veteran arrogance, a ship designed to intimidate, not to survive. They'd never expected to meet a human crew that knew how to use the environment against them. "Leave them," she said. "They'll have a long walk home." Vance turned to look at her. "And if they send reinforcements, then we'll be long gone." Reyes pulled up the next set of coordinates. "Helm, set course for the Vale's eastern edge. We still have a secret to guard." The Wren turned away from the crippled frigate, its silhouette disappearing into the silicate haze. Behind them, the frigate's distress beacon began to pulse, a faint signal that would take hours to reach the nearest veteran outpost. By then, the Wren would be gone, and the secret it guarded would remain buried in the dark. Reyes allowed herself a moment of stillness, her hand resting on the console. The Wren had taken damage, but it was still flying. The crew was still breathing. And the secret, whatever it was that had brought them here, whatever the Admiralty had deemed worth dying for, was still safe. "Ortega," she said, her voice softer now. "How long to repair the sensor array?" 6 hours, maybe 7, if the parts hold." "Make it 5, we're not done yet." Ortega nodded, already moving toward the repair bay. The Wren's engines hummed, steady and sure, carrying them deeper into the nebula's embrace. The dark secret they guarded would not be revealed today. The Wren's deck plates vibrated underfoot, the steady thrum of her damaged engines mixing with the distant crackle of burning wiring from the port hull breach. Somewhere behind them, the crippled veteran frigate's distress beacon pulsed faintly through the silicate haze, a signal they'd thought was harmless an hour before. Reyes stood at the command pit, reviewing the damage report on her datapad, the sharp tang of ozone and burnt insulation cutting through the recycled air. Across the pit, Jax hunched over the tactical console, his brow furrowed as he ran diagnostics on the patched-together passive sensor suite. Jax said, not looking up from his screen. "Long-range passive just picked up a contact, bearing 270, range 4,200 clicks, moving at 0.8 course matches ours." Reyes looked up. "Veteran frigate survivors, negative. Frigate signature was 3 times that mass. This is a small craft, no transponder, no active emissions. Looks like it's adjusting course to intercept." She'd written it off as drift debris at first. Silicate chunks in the nebula often mimicked moving contacts on degraded sensors, but Jax's next words made her stomach tighten. It's not tumbling, it's maneuvering, and it's got a high-gain antenna pointed right at us. Before she could respond, Ortega's voice crackled over the comms, sharp with panic. "Co, you need to hear this. I pulled the frigate's comms buffer before we fried their systems. That distress beacon wasn't just a call for help. It's a hunter-killer drone summon signal, encrypted, auto-pings every veteran hunter drone within 12 light hours. First wave is 8 drones, ETA 22 minutes. A split second later, the port hull lurched. A micro-torpedo slammed into the crew quarters 3 decks down, blowing out a 3-meter hull breach. Red alarms blared across the bridge, damage control teams sprinting for the ladders even as the ship's automated sealant system sprayed foam over the rupture. Hull breach report. Rays barked, port quarters, sections 4 through 7. 1 casualty, Ensign Kale, shrapnel to the left shoulder, medics are stabilizing him now. Breach is sealed, but we took out the secondary life support for that deck. Jax cursed under his breath. Contacts visible on short range now. Veteran hunter drone, matte black angular, designed to hide in silicate haze. It's lining up for another shot. Another torpedo whined past the port nacelle, detonating close enough to blow out a panel of the engineering compartment. Engine power dropped 15% immediately, the deck tilting slightly as the port thruster lost pressure. "Helm hard turn into the silicate cloud bank ahead," Rays ordered, her voice steady even as the ship shook. "Get us into the particulate density. Their active sensors will get swamped." The Wren banked hard, diving into the thick, milky haze of the nebula's densest layer. The drone followed, but its targeting system stuttered as silicate particles clogged its sensor arrays. Its next 2 torpedoes fired blind, one detonating close enough to the stern to rattle the teeth of every crew member on the bridge, but failing to penetrate the hull. "Sensor array status," Rays called over the alarm. "Patched enough for long-range sweep," Ortega radioed back, his voice tight with effort. "I'm picking up the rest of the drone swarm. 7 more, closing in, ETA 18 minutes. We can't stay in this cloud, Co. The silicate is abrasive, eating through the hull plating. Current breach rate is 0.2 meters per minute. We'll have a catastrophic hull failure in 12 minutes if we stay." Jax leaned forward, his face pale. "We need to jettison the cargo, the Xyloth beacon, lighten the ship, make a run for the Veil's edge. If we don't, we all die and the veteran get the beacon anyway." Rays cut him off before he could finish. "Negative. That beacon maps every human colony in the Outer Rim. If the veteran get it, they'll blockade every inhabited system, kill billions. Our mission is to get it to the hidden outpost in the Veil." "No exceptions," she thought for half a second, then keyed the comms to the cargo bay. "Ortega, you remember the old ECM package we stowed after the Tanith campaign, the one the Admiralty said was obsolete?" There was a pause, then Ortega's voice came back, bright with realization. "The one that broadcasts fake veteran command signals. Yeah, I kept it. It's in storage locker C7. Rig it to broadcast a distress signal from the frigate we disabled. Tell the drones the frigate's crew activated a self-destruct, and the Wren is a friendly scout sent to investigate the malfunction. You have 2 minutes," Ortega whooped. On it, 2 minutes later, a high-gain signal blasted out of the Wren's cargo bay, encrypted on the veteran hunter drone frequency. On the tactical display, the 8 drones slowed, their IFFs pinging the Wren as a friendly veteran craft. One by one, they turned and headed back toward the crippled frigate's last known position to investigate the supposed self-destruct. The Wren pulled out of the cloud bank, hull plating scorched black in places, engines wheezing but holding. Ortega radioed a minute later, his voice rough with exhaustion. The sensor array was fully functional now, no more drones on the scope. Kale was stable, his wound patched up, no permanent damage. Rays leaned back in her chair, her hand resting on the console for a second, the weight of the mission settling back on her shoulders. Vance stepped up beside her, his face smudged with grease from the engineering teams he'd been helping. "That was too close," he said quietly. Rays nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display, where the Veil's eastern edge glowed faintly on the long-range sensors, 4 hours out. "The veteran always think we'll fold, throw away our mission, our crew, to save our own skins. They don't get it, we don't leave secrets behind." The Wren's engines hummed, steady again, carrying them deeper into the nebula's embrace. The Xyloth beacon in the cargo bay hummed softly in its lead line case, its secret still safe, guarded by a battle-scarred crew that didn't know how to quit. Word count, 987, Chapter 9, the Veil's edge, the nebula's eastern boundary loomed on the tactical display, a jagged curtain of ionized gas that shimmered like molten glass. Rays kept her eyes on it, jaw tight, as the Wren's battered hull creaked under the strain of its patched engines. Every vibration carried the reminder that they were one miscalculation away from drifting helplessly into the Veil's crushing storms. "Power distribution holding steady," Ortega reported, his voice clipped, professional. "But if we push past 80% thrust, the port coil will burn out." Rays nodded once. "We'll keep it at 70, no risks until we know what's waiting on the other side." Vance leaned against the console, arms folded, his gaze fixed on the sensor feed. The veteran frigate's signal is gone. Either they're dead or they're regrouping. They're regrouping, Reyes said flatly. The veteran don't abandon assets. They'll send another wing once they realize their drones were duped. Silence settled across the bridge, broken only by the hum of the consoles. The crew knew what that meant. The Wren had hours, maybe less, before another strike force arrived. And this time the enemy would come prepared. Kale stirred in the medbay feed, his voice faint but audible over the comm. Captain, the beacon, it's resonating stronger. The nebula's density is amplifying it. Reyes turned sharply. Amplifying how much? Enough that if the veteran have long-range sensors tuned to Xyloth frequencies, they'll pick it up. They'll know we're carrying it. The words hung heavy. The beacon wasn't just a relic, it was bait. A lure designed to draw predators from across the galaxy. And now inside the veil, its signal was magnified, screaming into the void. Ortega swore under his breath. We're sitting here with a flare gun in our cargo bay. Reyes straightened, her voice calm but edged with steel. Then we make sure the flare blinds them before it burns us. Ortega, recalibrate the sensor array. I want every particle shift mapped. Vance, reroute auxiliary power to the hull plating. If we're going to mask the beacon, we'll need to bleed energy into the nebula's currents. Vance frowned. That'll leave us exposed if they hit us with ion cannons. They'll hit us anyway, Reyes replied. Better to choose the battlefield. Minutes stretched into hours as the Wren crept toward the veil's edge. The nebula's storms grew thicker, lightning arcs flashing across the viewport, illuminating the scars on the ship's hull. Reyes watched the patterns, calculating, her mind moving 3 steps ahead. The veteran would come, the beacon would draw them, and the Wren would be waiting. The tactical display pinged. Ortega's voice cut through the tension. Contact, long range, multiple signatures, veteran cruisers, 3 of them vectoring straight toward us. The crew stiffened. 3 cruisers meant overwhelming firepower. The Wren couldn't match them in a stand-up fight. Reyes didn't flinch. Time to intercept, she asked. 40 minutes, Ortega replied. They're burning hard, Reyes tapped the console, her eyes narrowing. Then we use the veil. Ortega, feed me the storm patterns. Vance, prep the hull for overload. Kale, I need the beacon's modulation shifted, make it look unstable, like it's about to detonate. Kale's voice came back strained but determined. On it. The plan was brutal in its simplicity. Lure the cruisers into the veil's storms, mask the Wren's signature, and make the beacon look volatile enough to force the veteran into hesitation. If they thought the humans were willing to trigger a galactic-scale detonation, they might falter, and hesitation was all the Wren needed. The minutes ticked down. The nebula roared around them, arcs of plasma slamming against the hull, shaking the ship like a toy in a storm. Reyes stood at the center of it all, her voice steady, her orders precise. The crew moved with grim efficiency, no wasted motion, no panic. They had been here before, outnumbered, outgunned, and still alive. Cruisers entering the veil, Ortega reported. They're slowing, sensors are struggling in the interference. Reyes allowed herself a thin smile. Good, let them choke on the storm. The beacon pulsed, its signal jagged, erratic, exactly as Kale had tuned it. On the veteran displays, it would look like a weapon primed to unleash devastation. The cruisers hesitated, their formation breaking slightly as they adjusted course. Captain, Vance said quietly, if they call our bluff, they won't. Reyes cut him off. They think we're reckless. They think we'll burn the galaxy before we surrender. Let them believe it. The cruisers edged closer, their weapons charging, but their movements betrayed uncertainty. The Wren drifted deeper into the storm, its hull glowing faintly as Vance's overload bled energy into the nebula's currents. To the veteran, it would look like the humans were feeding the beacon, priming it for detonation. Ortega's voice was sharp. They're holding position, 30 clicks out. No weapons fire yet, Reyes exhaled slowly. Then we've bought time, keep the beacon unstable. If they move, we trigger the overload. The crew nodded, the weight of the gamble pressing down on them. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the Wren would be vaporized. But for now, the cruisers hesitated, caught between arrogance and fear. Reyes leaned forward, her eyes locked on the tactical display. The veteran think we're bluffing. They think humans won't risk annihilation. They're wrong, we don't bluff. We endure. And if they want this secret, they'll bleed for it. The storm raged outside, the beacon pulsed inside, and the Wren held its ground, battle-scarred, defiant, guarding a secret that could shatter empires. Word count, 986. We need to write chapter 10 of 12 for episode 30. The provided context ends with the W Wren holding its ground, bluff-ing with overloaded beacon. The chapter should continue the tension. Must be 800 0 words, military sci-fi, no cliches, macro to micro scale. Focus on the clash between arrogant aliens and calm humans. Use crisp dialogue, output only story text. Given the previous chapter ended with cruisers hesitating, this chapter could escalate. Perhaps the Vethren test the bluff or a new threat emerges. Need to drive plot forward. The secret is dark galactic secret. Keep high stakes. Maybe introduce a Vethren commander's perspective or a human countermove. Ensure it's long and detailed. I'll write chapter 10, continuing from the standoff. The Vetheran might send a probe or threaten to fire at the Wren's critical systems. The humans must react. Use Reyes, Vance, Ortega maintained tension, end with a cliffhanger or decision. The Vetheran cruisers held their position, their formation a tightening noose. 30 clicks out, their weapons hummed at full charge, visible as rippling heat against the void. Inside the Wren, the bridge remained silent except for the low thrum of the overloaded beacon and the steady hiss of recycled air. Reyes watched the tactical display, her fingers steepled. The beacon's energy output climbed past 90%. Vance's modifications had turned it into a bomb, one that would collapse the Nebula's core in a cascading fusion event. The Vetheran didn't know that. They saw a weapon primed to fire. They're hailing us, Ortega said. Audio only, Reyes nodded. Put it through, a voice crackled across the speakers, cold, measured with the clipped precision of a species that had never known defeat. Human vessel, you are trapped, your star drive is crippled, your bluff is transparent. Power down the anomaly and we will grant you a clean execution. Reyes didn't flinch. You're not in a position to grant anything. The Nebula will not save you. Our sensors detect the energy signature. You have overloaded the artifact. Detonation would destroy this system and cripple our fleet, but it would also annihilate you. You are not suicidal. You don't know us, Vance muttered under his breath. Reyes keyed the mic. We've been dead for years, Commander. This ship is all that's left. You think we care about one more explosion? The secret you're hunting, we've seen what it does. We'd rather burn it than let you touch it. Silence stretched. The Vetheran commander's voice returned, softer now, almost curious. You fear what we will become. We fear what you already are. The display flickered. One of the cruisers began a slow lateral drift, angling its broadside toward the Wren's exposed engineering hull. A firing solution. They're testing us, Vance said. They want to see if we'll trigger the overload early. Reyes didn't answer. She watched the targeting vectors paint themselves across her console. The cruiser's cannons could punch through the Wren's remaining armor in 3 salvos, maybe 2. Ortega fire a single burst from the forward railgun, widespread, aim for the empty space between the cruiser and the beacon. That's a warning shot. No, it's a message. Do it. The railgun coughed, a dull, metallic thud that vibrated through the deck. A stream of depleted uranium slugs tore through the Nebula, missing the Vetheran cruiser by 2 clicks but passing directly through the line of sight between the cruiser and the beacon. The Vetheran would see it as a ranging shot, a calibration. The cruiser stopped its drift. They're recalculating, Ortega reported. Their firing solution is broken. Reyes leaned back, because they don't know if that was a miss or a warning. They don't know if our next shot will hit the beacon and trigger the overload. They're scared. Scared of us, Vance said. One ship, half its systems fried. Scared of what we represent, Reyes corrected. We're the only species that would rather die than lose. That terrifies them more than any weapon. The beacon's output hit 97%. The hull temperature warnings were flashing amber. The Wren was cooking itself from the inside out. We can't hold this much longer, Vance said. The containment field is degrading. Another 5 minutes and the overload becomes irreversible. Reyes nodded slowly. Then we change the game. She opened a channel to the Vetheran fleet on a broad frequency. This is Captain Reyes of the ASF Wren. You have 2 minutes to withdraw beyond the Nebula's outer edge. If you do not comply, I will initiate a controlled collapse of the beacon. The resulting electromagnetic pulse will scramble your sensors for 10 light years. You'll be blind, stranded, and easy prey for any patrol that finds you. You're lying, the Vetheran commander said. You can't control the collapse. You're right, I can't, but I can aim it. A railgun will fire a precision shot into the beacon's core, directing the energy released toward your fleet. You'll take the full force of the blast. We'll be shielded by the Nebula's magnetic field. It's not a clean solution, but it'll stop you. The Vetheran didn't respond. The seconds stretched. On the tactical display, the cruisers began to reverse course. Slowly, one by one, they pulled back, their weapons going dark, their formation dissolving into a retreat. Ortega let out a breath she'd been holding. They're withdrawing. Reyes didn't relax. They'll be back. They'll think of a counter. By then, we need to be gone. She turned to Vance. You stabilize the beacon enough to mask our energy signature. Make it look like we're still here, still primed while we slip out. Vance wiped sweat from his brow. Maybe if I reroute the coolant through the secondary manifold, but it'll take 10 minutes and we'll have to drop the overload to 50%. Do it. The Wren's crew moved with practiced urgency. The Vetheran cruisers continued their retreat, their hulls shrinking into the Nebula's haze. For now, the bluff held, but Reyes knew the truth. The secret they guarded wasn't just a weapon. It was a map, a key, and the Vetheran would tear the galaxy apart to find it. She looked at the beacon's pulsing core. We're not done yet, she whispered. The bridge of the Wren smelled like burnt insulation and sour coolant, the hum of failing thrusters vibrating through the dented deck plates under Rey's boots. A jagged crack ran up the bulkhead behind the tactical console, oozing faint blue sparks from a severed power line. Vance was hunched over the beacon's control panel, his forearm bandaged where a coolant burst had scalded him 10 minutes prior, his fingers flying across the haptic interface. Stealth probe 12 clicks port bow, Ortega called, her voice tight, eyes fixed on her sensor readout. No transponder, passive scan only. Signature matches veteran recon drones. It didn't retreat with the cruisers. Jax's prosthetic hand clicked as he gripped the weapon's controls. 2 microtorpedoes left, modified for low yield, no plasma exhaust trail. Can take it out before it gets close enough to ping our life support emissions. The beacon masking can't cover those. Fire, Ray's ordered. The torpedo streaked out of the Wren's tube, silent until it impacted the probe 90 seconds later, a dull flash of white light swallowed by the nebula's haze. Ortega's console beeped immediately. Cruisers have stopped retreating, all weapons powering up, ETA to firing range, 90 seconds. The blast pinged their passive sensors. Masking progress, Ray's asked, not taking her eyes off the tactical display where the veteran formation was turning back, their hulls glinting red as weapon systems came online. 72%, Vance snapped, sweat dripping onto the console. If we move now, thruster emissions will blow the fake overload signature. I need 25 more seconds to hit 100%. We don't have 25 seconds, Jax said, already spinning the point defense turrets to face the incoming cruisers. Their first salvo will be here in 70. Hold position, Reyes said, her voice steady, no trace of the tension coiling in her chest. Ortega prep slipspace drive for immediate jump the second masking hits 100%. Jax, ready point defense, were taking fire. The first plasma bolt slammed into the Wren's forward shield 60 seconds later, the ship lurching so hard Reyes grabbed the edge of her console to stay upright. Sparks showered from the overhead conduits, the alarms blaring as shields dropped to 58%. Vance roared as a coolant line burst near his station, soaking his pant leg, but he didn't look up, slamming the manifold override hard enough to crack the plastic casing. Mask Chapter 12, the Wren's hull groaned under the strain, metal plates flexing as another plasma barrage hammered the shields. Ortega's voice cut through the chaos, masking complete 100%, slipspace drive primed, Reyes didn't hesitate. Execute jump now, the nebula around them warped, stars bending into streaks as the drive tore open a corridor. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, then the ship lurched forward, vanishing from the veteran cruiser's targeting grid. The alien formation fired blind into the haze, their arrogance betrayed by the fury of wasted salvos. Inside the Wren, the crew exhaled as one. Shields stabilized at 42%. The coolant leak hissed, but Vance had rerouted flow. Jax's turrets cooled, barrels glowing faintly. Status, Reyes demanded. Ortega's fingers danced across the console. We're clear of immediate pursuit, but he hesitated. They're triangulating, the veteran know we're masking, they'll predict our exit vector within minutes. Reyes leaned forward, eyes narrowing, then we don't give them minutes. The slipspace corridor spat them out into a sector of the nebula darker than void, a place where sensors failed and even light seemed reluctant to travel. The Wren drifted, battered but alive. Jax broke the silence. Captain, this sector, it's not on any chart. Vance's voice was low, almost reverent. It's the graveyard. Old ASF records mention it. Ships lost here during the first expansion. No wreckage ever recovered. Reyes studied the tactical overlay. The nebula's density here was unnatural, layered like armor. Ortega scanned for anomalies, passive only, no emissions. Minutes passed, then Ortega's console pulsed faintly. Captain, I've got something, a structure, massive, buried in the nebula's core, not veteran, not human. The crew exchanged glances. Reyes felt the weight of command pressing harder than any plasma barrage. Visuals, the screen flickered, resolving into the outline of a colossal construct, angular, alien, dormant. Its hull was scarred but intact. Symbols etched across its surface glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Jax muttered, "That's no derelict, that's a fortress." Ortega shook his head, "Not fortress." "More like a vault." Reyes' voice was steady, but her chest tightened. ASF Command suspected something hidden here, that's why they sent us alone. The Wren wasn't guarding a secret, it was bait, drawing the veteran into the graveyard. Vance slammed his fist against the console. "You mean they knew we'd stumble into this?" Reyes didn't answer immediately. She watched the alien construct, its silent menace radiating across the void. Finally, she spoke. ASF gambled, they wanted proof. And now we have it. The tactical display blinked, veteran cruisers closing fast. Their arrogance had carried them straight into the graveyard. Jax's jaw tightened. They're coming in hot. 6 cruisers, weapons charged. If they see the vault, they'll try to claim it, Reyes finished. And if they do, humanity's finished. Silence hung heavy. Then Reyes straightened, her voice calm, terrifyingly calm. "We hold the line." Ortega plot evasive maneuvers. Jax point defense on full auto. Vance divert every watt into shields. The Wren may be scarred, but she's not broken. The crew moved, no hesitation. The first veteran salvo ripped through the nebula, plasma bolts carving luminous scars across the dark. The Wren spun, shields flaring, turrets barking in response. Reyes' orders came crisp, surgical. "Roll starboard, fire countermeasures." Keep them guessing, the alien cruisers advanced, arrogant in their numbers, but the humans were resourceful, their calm precision a weapon sharper than any plasma lance. Jax's voice was a growl, 2 cruisers down to half shields, they weren't ready for our turrets in this density. Ortega added, slip space interference is spiking, their drives won't stabilize here, they're trapped with us. Reyes allowed herself the faintest smile, good, then we bleed them here. The battle raged, plasma and flak tearing through the graveyard's silence. The Wren danced between salvos, scarred hull defiant. One veteran cruiser erupted in a bloom of fire, its arrogance shattered. Another limped, venting atmosphere into the void, but the Wren was bleeding too, shields at 19%. Hull breaches sealed only by emergency bulkheads. Vance's hands shook as he rerouted power, but his voice was steady. We can take one more salvo, no more. Rey's gaze locked on the vault. The symbols pulsed brighter as if awakened by the clash. She felt the truth settle in her bones. This isn't just a vault, it's a weapon, and it's choosing sides. The construct's glow intensified, casting eerie light across the nebula. The veteran cruisers faltered, their sensors scrambled. Ortega's console screamed with interference. Captain, the vault is emitting. It's targeting them. One by one, the alien cruisers convulsed, hulls cracking under invisible pressure. Their weapons sputtered, systems collapsing. The arrogance of empires crumbled in silence. The Wren drifted, battered but alive, as the vault's glow dimmed once more. Jax whispered, it spared us. Reyes stood tall, her voice carrying the weight of command and revelation. No, it tested us. Humanity was calm under fire, resourceful, relentless. That's why it let us live. The crew stared at the vault, the dark galactic secret revealed at last. Reyes turned from the display, her voice cold, decisive. Transmit to ASF command, the graveyard holds a weapon, the veteran are broken. Humanity is chosen, end of episode. The Wren drifted in silence, scarred but unbowed, guarding a secret that would reshape the galaxy.